Hi, this is Ali Arango from Game Visuals, and today I want to show you how to do movement and animation for a side-scroller shooter inside of Gdevelop 5. So let's get started. Okay, the first thing you want to do is click on Create a New Project. You'll see these options here pop up. What you want to do is scroll down and look to where you see Empty Game. This is what we're going to click eventually. However, before that, what we want to do is choose to where our game files are going to be stored at. So we're going to click on Choose Folders, or Choose Folder. I'm going to go to Desktop, and I made a folder right here. So I'm going to double click on this folder. So now when I click Select Folder, which I didn't do yet, when I do this, our game files are going to be stored here. So I'm going to click Select Folder. Okay, so now with that done, now that we know where our game files are going to go to, now I'm going to select Empty Game. Okay, when I did that, this menu here popped up. What we want to do is focus our attention on scenes. Scenes are basically the different parts of our game and how it's going to be handled by Gdevelop. So what we want to do is look to this plus button right here, and we can see right here it says click to add a scene. So we're going to click this plus button, and now we have a new scene. Now this new scene is where most of our game assets are going to go, and this is where our game is going to take place in for the most part. I guess, yeah, for the most part, yeah, for some new scene. So we're going to left click here. I'm going to select rename. I'm going to name this game 1. Okay, so now that I have this scene, now I'm going to just left click on this area here. And when I did that, you can see this popped up, these options here and here. This right here, our project panel, if we want to get this out of the way, we can click the X button to get that out of the way. If we want to bring it back, we can click here, and it just comes right back. First thing we want to do is bring in our player character. So we're going to click on this plus button here. Then we're going to, after we clicked on that plus button, we see these different options here. You want to focus your attention on sprite. I'm going to left click here, and then this is going to be our player. So I'm going to name this player. And what we want to do now is look to this plus to the right here. And then we want to look to this plus to the left here. And what we want to do here is bring in our idle, our sprites for our idle animation. So I have this folder set up here, and I have this folder named idle. So I'm going to left click there. I'm going to hold Control and press A. That's a shortcut to select all of these frames. I'm then going to click Open. Okay, if you're wondering where these frames came from, I am a 3D animator, modeler, and rigger. I modeled, animated, and rigged this robot inside of Blender. I will put a link in the description so that you can get to these frames so that you can follow along with this tutorial. Okay, so now that we have these frames here, what I'm going to do is I'm going to go to where we see animation 0. And this animation 0 is associated with these frames. So I'm going to name this idle. Okay, we need to bring in some other frames for other animations, and we need to bring in walk frames as well as jump frames. So what we're going to do is go to the right, click this plus button. I'm going to name this walk for this next animation that we're about to bring in. So just be aware you have your animation name, and then underneath that is going to be your animation frames. Okay, so I'm going to click this plus button. Go to where I have my robot sprite files at. I'm going to double click for walk, hold Control, press A, and then I'm going to click Open. Okay, so now we have our walk frames. Now we need our jump frames, so I'm going to go to this plus to the right, click there, I'm going to scroll down. I'm going to go to this animation 2, I'm going to name this jump. Then I'm going to click this plus to the left. Now I'm going to go and get the jump frames. So I'm going to hold Control, press A, and then I'm going to click Open to bring those frames in. Okay, so now we have these frames set up to be our animations. However, we need to set up the timing for these frames. So if I click Preview, so I'm right next to our idle animation, basically what's going on is each frame is being played each second, and that's too slow. And the reason why that's going on is you see this clock symbol right here, that 1? This is controlling the timing of this. So there's a few things we want to do here, or two things I should say we want to do here. One, we want this to be a looping animation. So see where this says don't loop, we're going to left click here and change this to loop. And then for this, we're going to click here. We're going to change this to 0.08 for the timing. And now what we're going to do is we're going to click on the preview. And we can see this looks good. I think the timing of that looks good now. So we'll click close. So now basically we need to do the same thing with the other animation. So we're going to scroll down, select don't loop so that this actually loops. We're going to change this to 0.08. And then we're going to click preview just to take a look. I think that looks good. We're going to click close. For this jump animation, we actually don't want this to loop. So for this, we're going to leave this at don't loop. We're going to go here for this one. We're going to change this to 0.08. And then we're going to click preview. And for this, since it's not looping, it stops. We can just click replay. And I think that looks good as well. So we're going to click close now. Okay, so this is set up as far as our animation. So now we're going to click apply. Okay, so what we're going to do now is we're going to left click and drag our player onto our screen. So I'm rolling my mouse wheel back. We can see this black area here that represents our work area. I'm going to hold shift, hover my mouse over this square right here. And while I'm holding shift, I'm just moving my mouse in to scale this down. So we have our player right there. Now we need ground for this player to walk on. One of the very cool things in Gdevelop is you don't always have to go outside of Gdevelop to get objects or to have objects. You can actually make objects inside of Gdevelop, which is very cool. So what we're going to do is go to our right. We're going to click on this plus button to the right. We're going to look to where we see this tiled sprite. We're going to left click. And then for our object name, we're going to name this ground. Okay, so what we're going to do now is we're going to go to this brush here. We're going to left click on the brush. Once we did that, this text popped up that says edit with pixels. We're going to left click here right on that text. This image editor pops up, and this image editor actually allows us to make and work with sprites inside of Gdevelop. Very cool. So what we're going to do is go to this color picker right here. We're going to left click on here. I'm going to click on the yellow, and I went here because I want a brownish color. So now I'm just going to click outside of the color picker. I'm going to click on the paint bucket, and then I'm going to left click here to fill this square. Okay, with that done, I'm going to click and name this image ground. It's really not that important what you name the actual image, but it's named ground. So now we're going to left click and select save to Gdevelop. Now we're going to click apply. So now we have this ground object right here. So what we're going to do is left click and drag this on or into our work area. We're going to left click on this. When we do that, we see these different squares pop up along with this circle. The circle allows us to rotate things. This square right here, the top one to the right, we're going to left click and drag. And this lets us actually drag out. So now we have ground to work with. Okay, one of the cool things in Gdevelop is because I'm an artist, when I go into a game engine, I want to see something happen. Something cool happen to some of the artwork that I brought into this game engine. And Gdevelop allows you to do cool things with your artwork extremely quickly. What we're going to do now is we're going to give our player the ability to move. So the way we're going to do that is we're going to double click on player. We're then going to look to our panel that opened up. We're going to look to where we see behaviors. We're going to left click on behaviors. When we did that, we see this purple line underneath behaviors. We're going to go to our right and click plus. And now we have these different options here. We want to select platform character. So I'm going to left click there. Now we have these different options that we can adjust as far as we want how this platform character behavior to work. And what this platform behavior does is it automatically sets things up for our player or whatever object we choose to put this behavior onto, so that when we push our arrow keys, our player will move, left and right, be able to jump. It is very cool and very quick, which I like a lot. So we're going to click apply. Okay, so now that we have that done, our player has the ability to walk back and forth. Our player also has the ability to jump, and with that jump, that platform character put gravity on this player. So we need to set up this ground so that this ground will be able to hold the player and also not have the player fall through the ground. So we're going to left click on the ground. We're going to double click on ground. Then we're going to click on behaviors. We can see there's that purple line again. We're going to look to our right. We're going to look to our options here. This time, last time we picked platform character. This time we're going to select platform. So we left click there. And I'm just going to uncheck this ledges can be grabbed. And then I'm going to select apply. And now our platform character, not our platform character here and our platform has the ability to work as it should. Okay, so now when we click our preview button, our character has gravity, our character has their idle animation working. When I push the arrow keys, you can see the character is moving back and forth. If I press the space bar, our character jumps. So our character doesn't have the animation set up. That's part of the reason for this tutorial. However, it's cool that you can see that the idle animation working and that our character is able to jump and have gravity on our platform. However, see how the character is hovering above the platform here? I'll show you why that is, and I'll show you how to fix that. So I'm just going to left click to close that preview for now. If you're following along with this tutorial, I recommend you go to File and then Save, so that if something happens, you have your work saved. Okay, so as far as why our character is basically hovering above this instead of looking like it is standing on it, what we can do is double click on our player. So we're back in where we have our behaviors, our properties. If we scroll down, we see these options here, edit hitboxes as well as edit points. We want to select edit hitboxes. And basically what happens is when you come into Gdevelop, you bring a sprite in, Gdevelop automatically puts a hitbox on your object that you brought in. So if I scroll down here, see the space right here? So this space is the space that's making it look like our character is actually hovering over the ground. The way we can deal with that is we can select use a custom collision mask. So I'm going to left click there. And then what I'm going to do is, I'll show you right now, there's no hitbox. So what you want to do is select this plus to the right. And now you see this right here, that's our new hitbox. What we want to do is take these circles and drag out this hitbox. Now for the bottom, what we want to do is we actually don't want to drag our hitbox so that it's going all the way to the ground, and you'll see why. I'm just pulling this out to make this more square. Push this in some. Okay, the reason why you don't want to have this come all the way down, these points, because basically our character is going to meet the ground platform right where this is, right? The reason why you don't want to have this come all the way down to the ground is because our character is not in an orthographic view. Orthographic view is kind of like a totally 2D, like where there's almost no 3D-ness to how our character looks. Our character it's on a side view, but it's also in kind of an isometric view. Like you can see that you can see dimensions to it. Long story short, we want to have it being our character looking like it's standing on the platform. The best way to do that is to have this hitbox actually be up a little bit so that there's actually some room for the character to stand. And hopefully you'll see what I'm talking about in a moment. So with that done, I'm just going to click close. And then I'm going to select apply. Okay, so when I click the preview button now, our character falls down and our character is no longer hovering. However, the character is now behind the ground. We don't want that. So we're going to close this. And the reason for that is I'm going to click on the character. When I clicked on the character, we can see our properties over here. This Z order here determines what is in front of another object. So think of 1 as being all the way in the back. 2 is a little bit forward. So our character is on number 1. When I click on the ground platform, you can see this is number 2. So the higher the number, the closer you are forward towards the screen. So this is set for 2. Our character is set for 1. As long as our character's number is above 2, our character will be in front of this ground platform. So what I'm going to do is change this to 8. I'm just choosing 8. It's just a number. Any number above 2 would work. We could also have changed this to 1 and then made this 2. That would have worked. I just chose 8 just because I chose it. Okay, now let's preview this. And now you can see it looks like our character is actually standing on this ground now. And hopefully you can see also why with the hitbox, I actually made the hitbox be up some, because it looks like our character is, there's a little bit of dimensionality to the graphics, so I think it looks good how it is now. However, when we move, our character doesn't go into its walk animation, and when we jump, our character doesn't go into its jump animation. So I'm going to show you how to set that up. Okay, so far we've been in this area where we're basically working with art. What we need to do now is set things up so that we can work with the programming of Gdevelop. Programming in Gdevelop is very nice. It is very artist friendly because there's almost no code. There's a small amount of code, but almost no code. You actually can work with code if you want to. However, Gdevelop lets you do a lot and lets you do a lot very quickly without using, for the most part, almost any code at all. So what we're going to do is we see this game 1 event. We're going to left click there. Once we click here, we see this message that says there are no events here. Events are composed of conditions and actions. Add your first event using the first buttons of the toolbar. So we're going to left click here. And now we see we have a condition as well as an action. The way you want to think of conditions is think of conditions of when something happens, and think of an action for the most part as what to do. So this is when something happens, basically do this. So what we want to do is select add condition. We have all these different options. We want to scroll down to where we see platform behavior. And then what we want to do is look to this option where it says is on floor. So we're going to left click there. And then we want the player to be on the floor. So we're going to select player. And then we're going to select OK. Okay, so we're basically saying, look, when the player is on the floor, and we're telling Gdevelop when the player is on the floor, we want you to do something. There's numerous ways you can set up the programming for Gdevelop. What we want to do now is we actually want to add 4 sub-events to this. So this makes an event, and an event contains a condition and an action. We want the sub-event button, which is right here. Now, if you click here, see how the sub-event, you can't select that sub-event. What you want to do is, where it says player is on the floor, you want to click right under here, like where there's add condition, in the nothingness of add condition. So when you click there, you'll see that you have this button pop up. So I'm going to click here 4 times. And the first thing we want to do is, we're saying, the reason why we put these sub-events in here is because these other events are going to deal with actions that we want to take place while the character is on the floor. So by making these sub-events, we only have to say the character is on the floor 1 time. So what we want to do with this now is we want to go to add condition, scroll back down to platform behavior, and what we want to do here is select is moving. And we're done with the player, so we're going to select the player, and now we're going to select OK. So what we want to happen is we want for when the player is moving for something to happen. And what that something is we want our player to walk. So I'm going to select add action. So remember, condition is when something happens, action is what you want to happen. So what we want to do is go to sprite, then select animations and images, and then you want to select change the animation by name. And the what we're working with is the player. And then this is important here. We brought in the frames, the sprite frames for our walk animation, and we named that walk. So what we want to do is left click here. Because this is something that we made up, like we chose to type the name walk. That wasn't something Gdevelop chose. We chose it. We could have made You know, instead of saying walk, we could have put, you know, walk a little or walk fast or walk metallically, walk robot-y, whatever. Because we chose walk, we want to put in parentheses, walk. You want to put in the exact name of that animation that you put in, and then you're going to click OK. And because we did that, where we have this now saying, okay, the player's on the floor, the player is moving, what do you want to happen? Okay, we want the player to walk. So now, when we go to move, we can see that our character starts its walk animation. However, things still aren't right. We want the character, when it's not moving, to not walk. And we have that idle animation. So what we can do, and this is pretty cool in Gdevelop, what we can do is we can hover over players moving. Actually, let me click on there. I'm going to right click. When I click, by the way, I clicked in this nothingness here to select this. I'm going to right click, and then I'm going to select copy. And now what I'm going to do is I'm going to be careful of this blue line. This blue line, everything on this blue block is connected to right here. All right, this is important. See how there's one blue box, 2, 3, 4. You don't want to select this add condition here. Like I'm about to paste what I copied. You don't want to paste that to add condition connected with the same blue box. You want to go to the second. The blue box should just say, this is a separate sub event, is basically what's going on. So hovering over this add condition here that isn't the add condition directly under players moving, I'm going to right click, and I'm then going to select paste. So we have this player is moving, right? Why did we do that? The reason why we did that is we're going to double click on this. And before we told Gdevelop, look, when something is moving, when the player is moving, we want you to walk. This time we want to tell Gdevelop, when a player is not moving, we want you to do something. So how do we do that? We can go right here where we see this invert condition. We're going to left click. So now it basically invert condition does the opposite of what the condition looks like it's saying. So check if the object is moving. This is going to check if the object isn't moving because it's checking for the inverted condition of this, or this is moving, so this is saying check if it's not moving. So we're going to select OK. So because we say, okay, when the player is not moving, we want you to do something, what do we want it to do? We want Gdevelop to set the animation of the player to, instead of walk, to idle. So normally we would go to add action, sprite, animations and images. We would go down to change the animation by name. However, we're not going to do that. I just want you to be aware that you can do that. That's the longer way. The shorter way is we can left click here and then hover over this, what we have selected here, this action, right click, select copy. Make sure that you're not going to add action directly underneath set animation. Because if you look at this blue box here, that's in there. We don't want that. You want it to be aligned with this. And again, you can kind of tell by the blue box. So we're going to right click, select paste. So now it says set animation of player to walk. We want this to be idle. And what's cool is we can double click here to go back into our area where we can work with the different actions, or we can just click on walk. Gdevelop pops up this little panel for us, and then we can just change this to idle. It's very cool. So now this is saying when the player is not moving, set the animation player to idle. So now let's click the preview button. So now when our character walks, you see the walk animation, but when the character is not walking, you see the idle animation, which is exactly what we want. So we still have work because when I'm pushing to the right, we want the character to turn to the right. The character's not doing that right now. So what we're going to do is we're going to close this, and we're going to get ready to set up to have this player do what we want it to do. Okay, so how do we get this character to turn, the way it's supposed to be facing when we press an arrow key? What we're going to do is we're going to go to add condition. We're going to left click. We're going to look for keyboard. We're going to left click there. We're going to scroll down to key pressed. We're going to left click. And then what we're going to do is I'm going to hold shift to type in capital L. And then I'm going to type in EFT. Now I typed that in. However, you didn't necessarily have to type that in. You could have went through the keys and found left yourself, and you can see left because I typed in here. Gdevelop's like, oh, is this what you want? However, I already typed it in. So I just want you to be aware you didn't have to. You could have selected from the list. So now with that done, I'm just clicking here to get that menu to go away. I'm going to select OK. And okay, so with this selected, now what we're going to do, so basically, remember, we say, you know, what? This is when something happens, do something. So we're going to click here. We're going to go to Sprite. We're going to go to Effects. And what we want to do is go to this Flip the Object Horizontally. So we're going to left click there. And we're going to select Player. And then we have this Activate Flipping. We're going to select No. Then we're going to click OK. Now we need to basically have this done again. So what we're going to do is use Gdevelop's ability to just copy and paste. We're going to copy. Remember, we're not copying to this add condition directly underneath. We're going to another sub event. You can tell from these separated blue boxes here. I'm going to right click and select paste. So now this left, I'm just going to left click there. I'm going to delete this. I'm going to put in capital R. This is important. And now with that, and I could also select here to get right, or I could have selected through the list. So now this says when the right key is pressed, do something. So what we're going to do is click here. So I left click, now I have right clicked, I'm selecting copy, hovering right over add action, right clicking and selecting paste. So now this says flip player. This is fine, except we want this to be yes. So we're going to left click here. And then we're going to select activate flipping. We're going to select yes. Okay, so with this set up, these two conditions as well as these two actions, when we preview, let's see what happens. So now when we push to the right and we push to the left, our character does as it should. So now when I press the jump key, our character still doesn't go into its jump animation. So let's set that up. Okay, so what we want to do is for this jump, we don't want this, where we set up this jump, we don't want this to be a sub-event. You can tell what's an event because it's all the way out, almost to the end. In the sub-event, you can tell because they're indented away from this event. So what we're going to do is we're going to go up to the top, and we're going to click near the bottom. So we have this add condition. So to the right of that, we're clicking. See how this blue line is right along the bottom of this event? Because that blue line is there, now when we click this event, we'll have another event right here. Not Try not to say A lot of times there's tutorials sometimes that frustrate me a lot because people are describing things and they're like, I'm like, I don't know. Anyway, what we want to do is we're going to click add condition. We're going to scroll down to platform behavior, and then we're going to scroll down more. We're going to select is jumping. And our focus is the players. We're going to click there. We're then going to click OK. Okay, we could click add action and go through and get our set animation and all that, but why do that when we have this here? So what we're going to do is we're just going to right click. So I left click first, made this gray, selected copy. I did it just to make sure, it makes me feel good seeing this is gray. I copied this action. Now I'm going to hover right over the words add action. I'm going to right click and I'm going to select paste. And I did that just so I could easily have this. And now I can click here and I can just type in this. And when I say this, I mean in between those two quotations, type jump. So basically what's going on is we're telling Gdevelop when our player is jumping, do this. So set the animation of the player to jump. So now when we click play, or the preview button, make sure everything still works. And when we jump, now we see that our character is going into its jump animation. Remember, we didn't have that jump set for loop in case something's off. This isn't set for loop. So our character is walking and jumping and going back to its idle, which is excellent. Okay, so what we're going to do now is we are going to give our character the ability to fire. So I'm going to click back on where we see this game one. So I want to tell you something right now. When our character fires, we don't have a cool animation set up where you see the character, lift up its arm and position its arm to have the fire come out or something like that. You're going to see the animations that we have right now in the bullets are going to be coming from the character. Just want to prepare you for that, but the way this is going to be set up, our character will fire in whichever direction that it is pointing in as it's walking around. It also fire while it's jumping up and down. Okay, so I had said before in Gdevelop, we don't always have to go out of Gdevelop to bring something in. So what we're going to do is we're going to look to this objects panel. We're going to click this plus button here. We're then going to look towards sprite. We're going to left click here. And we're going to click in this section for object name. We're going to put in bullet. And then now what we're going to do is we're going to click this plus button to the right. And we are going to click on Edit with Piskel. So now we have our graphic editor built into Gdevelop again. And currently our color is set for black. That's fine. What we're going to do now is we're going to click on this circle tool. And we're just going to drag this circle tool out. And then what we're going to do is click this color. We'll click a bluish color. Just going to click here to get that to go away. I'm going to go to the paint bucket and then select in the center of this just to fill that. And we're going to name this bullet. Again, the name of the actual image isn't so important. Now we're going to select Save to Gdevelop. And we have our bullet right here. Then we're going to left click on Apply. Okay, so with this bullet, we now have something to actually shoot. So we're going to left click on our game events. And we're going to set things up so we can actually shoot that bullet out. So I'm clicking here just so that I know when I go to make a new event, the new event's going to be an actual event, not a sub event. So I'm going to left click right here. So we have now this new event. And then with this, we're going to select Add Condition. We're going to click on our keyboard. We're going to scroll down to Key Pressed. And then we are going to select. We could go through this list and find n. However, we can just put in a lowercase n, okay? A lowercase n, or it can be whatever key that you want it to be. I'm just choosing n since it's towards like the center of my keyboard. A lot of times I'll use n-m. So I'm going to click OK. So now we have this set up. So we're saying, when n key is pressed, do something. And what we want to do is we're going to click Add Action. We're going to go to Common Action for all objects. We're going to left click there. We're going to left click on Objects. And then we're going to select Create in Object. We're going to select Bullet. And now we have this bullet about to be made. However, we want this to go to a specific point. So for now, we're going to click OK. Just so we have this set up. Now this isn't done. What we need to do is go to Game 1 and we're going to double click on our player. We're going to scroll down to the bottom. We're going to look to where we see Edit Points. Okay, in this Edit Points right now, scroll up. See this right here? This is our origin point right here. And that origin point corresponds to what you see right here. Now if I scroll down more, you see this point, and this is our center point. What we want to do is add another point, and to do that, we're going to look to this plus button to the right. We're going to left click here, and we're going to name this Fire Point. So we just have Fire, capital P-O-I-N-T. Now to make it easy to see our point, normally I click here, and I just put in 115 and then 35, and there's no particular reason to use those numbers. They tend to work well for seeing the point. So here's the new point right here. So we can drag this point down. See the point right there? Hopefully you can see that. Kind of difficult to see. So we're going to drag this point down. Now this point is where our bullet's going to come from. So again, we're not going to have some cool pose with the bullets shooting out. So we're just going to put this towards the front of our robot, and the bullet should come from this general area here. So now that we have this fire point set right there, we're going to left click on close, and then we're going to select apply. Okay, so with that fire point set up, we're going to click back on our Game 1 events. We're going to click back at this create a bullet at position. So we have the bullet selected there. Now what we want to do is we want to click right here. So we're going to click here, and what we want to do is scroll up, select common expressions for all. We're going to go down to position. We're going to left click there, and then we're going to select X position. So we see nothing right now after selecting X position. That's because we have to left click. And now we can see X position of what Gdevelop is basically saying. So we say the player, and we're picking the player because that's where the bullet's coming from. So now we have this player.x, two parentheses. Now you could have written this code in. We focus on this channel at gaming from an artist perspective. So most artists I know want to type as little code as possible. So I'm trying to show you when you don't have to type the code in. You can type this in, which is faster, quicker, if you want. So here I'm going to click here, go back up, same thing again, common expressions for all. I'm going to go down to position. This time I'm going to select the Y position. I'm going to click here, then select player. And this right here is the done button. So now I have this setup. So we still have to type in code. Sometimes I get frustrated. I'll see tutorials and the people say, there's no code, there's no code. If code is typing, there's a little. So what you need to do here is make sure that you go right before the period. You want to hold shift, put in a capital P, and you want this to say point X. So it's, period, point X, right? And then in between these parentheses, you want this to say fire, capital P, point. And then the same thing for this Y position. So you're going to hold shift, so you have a capital P, point, so it's going to be, period, capital P, point Y, and then again, this is going to be fire point. And then with that done, we can select OK. Okay, I apologize. I actually made a mistake here. We actually want to have another condition, and this condition is going to be in the same event as in key pressed. So we're going to click Add Condition. We're going to select Advanced, and then we're going to select Trigger once while true. Then we're going to select OK. Okay, now what we're going to do is we actually want sub-events here. So I'm clicking here and then underneath here. So see how this whole entire thing is has a blue outline? So I did that because I want to make sure that I add in the sub-events. So I'm going to click this twice. We need two sub-events. And this right here we actually want as a sub-event. So what we're going to do is we're going to right-click here, select Cut, and then paste this into the first sub-event as far as the action. And the reason why this has to be set up this way, when I first learned how to set up this character, it's fairly simple, but I did not know how to get the character to turn left and right to have when you fired the bullets, to have the bullets fire to the right when you're facing right and to the left when you're facing to the right. And this sets that up. So for the add condition for this first sub-event, we need to go to Sprite, Animations and Images. Oops. No, I'm sorry. It is Sprite, Effects, and then horizontally flipped. Okay, and the thing that we want flipped is the player. So we're going to select OK. And now that we have that done, the nice thing is we can just copy this, paste this. So this is going to the next sub condition. Remember, it's not directly underneath that add condition. It's the next sub event. So we're going to select paste. Now where we have this player is horizontally flipped, we want to double click here. We want to change this to invert condition. We're going to select OK. And for this, and this is still correct. I just originally had it not in the right spot. But this is going to make the bullet appear at that fire point. That's what this this code is here, to make this appear, the bullet appear at this. Now we need to have the bullet actually fire out. Okay, so to have the bullet fire out, that's what we're about to set up now. Okay, so what we're going to do is we're going to go to add action. So when we clicked add action, this is in the same sub event as create bullet. This isn't in the other sub event. Okay, so what we want to do is select common action for all, movement. Then we want to go to add a force angle. So we're going to left click there, and we're adding a force angle to the bullet. So we're going to left click on bullet. Then I'm going to just click to get that to, get that panel to go away. The angle, we want to choose 0. And the reason why we're choosing the angle is 0 is in Gdevelop. If you imagine a circle, to the right the angle is 0. The way things are set up, 0 is to the right. Directly the other direction is 180. So it's kind of like if this was a circle here, it would be 0, 90, 180, 270. And by those angles of degrees, you can tell which direction something is going. So for the speed, we're going to click here. We're going to put in 400. And then for this damping, we're going to put in 1. Then we're going to click OK. And since we have this already done, we're going to just right click, copy. And we're putting this in the next sub event down, the one that's the player is horizontally flipped is in. We're going to right click right over the text, select paste. And this right here is fine. So now we're fine being just how it is. For this next part, what we want to do is hover right over, or I clicked here to get this to turn gray. I'm going to right click, select copy, and then I'm going to paste this in the same sub event as the inverted player is horizontally flipped. So I'm going to right click, select paste. So the only thing we need different here is because 0 equals to the right, 180 equals to the left, we want to click on this 0 and we want to change this to 180 degrees. And now that should be good for having our bullets actually come out in the direction our robot is facing, our player is facing. Okay, we're about to preview this. However, I see that I did not capitalize the P in point here. Let me change that. So basically, if this is off even a little bit, if this isn't exactly the same thing as we put in for the actual fire point, this will not work as far as positioning our bullet to come out of the position that we set it up for. So now with that done, let's select preview. When we push to both directions, the character walks as it should. When we press jump, it jumps like it should. When we press N, our character is firing the bullets like it should. Now we don't have any kind of animation set up, like cool animation for this as it fires. However, imagine if we had an animation set up for like around here, and we wanted to move that point, the bullets where they come from, up. And yes, I know the bullet's very big. It's just for showing you for demonstration purposes. So we're going to go to game 1. We're going to move that bullet up so that, or move the position up so that the bullet's coming out more from an area that you would expect as this thing is firing. So we're going to select edit points. I'm going to scroll down. Here's our point. I'm just going to move this up here. I'm going to select close, apply, and then preview. Yeah, now that bullet is higher up. Very good. Okay, so I'm going to click back on the game events just so you can get a look at this code. So if you wanted to use this code yourself, you can, a lot of times you can, with Gdevelop, the way the program is set up, it's so nice that if you see how the code is set up, a lot of times you can work your way through it. Okay guys, that's it for the tutorial. If you like the videos here on game visuals, please subscribe. If you like this video, please like it. And if you like the videos on this channel, you would like to see more, please subscribe, and thank you for viewing.